Welcome to the Pulse of HR with your host, practitioners Angela Hooper Minifield and Robin K. Butler, curating conversations from the heart of HR with honesty, equity, accountability, resiliency, and transparency. Well, welcome to the Pulse of HR. I am Robin K. Butler and so excited to welcome you back as we continue our discussion on psychological safety. This is season 2, episode 3. And listen, I am with my friend, my sister, my soror, all things, Angela Hooper Minifield. Hey, Angela.
Hey, we are back and better than ever.
Yes. Well, we are excited to continue in our discussion. If you heard us episode 2, we began our journey into psychological safety, discussing what it was. Today, we want to go a little bit deeper as we give you some tools and resources, continuing the discussion in what it is, but then moving into a space of how you improve it. What can you do? How can you contribute to making your environment, your workplace, your business, your church, okay, your community, everything around you better based upon psychological safety? So I wanted to just start by saying, Angela, we should be in a place where we begin to demand a different culture. And both of us, my mind goes to interviews and how, oh boy, countless interviews with your background in more so the federal space, but even out of that as you've continued your journey as an entrepreneur, and my experience in the private sector, we've done countless interviews, and now it has become commonplace for people to ask questions about what's the culture like here. Right. And so psychological safety should be one of those things. Of course, nowhere is perfect. But if I was going to an interview right now, I want you to tell me a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly so I can make a decision, because we talk about hiring to fit, and that's another episode, right? But as we stay in the vein of psychological safety, it's the culture of an environment. How do the leaders treat their team members? Is it a collaborative work environment? Are we able to really have an open door policy to have some dialogue where I can say we agree to disagree agreeably? Did you hear what I said? We agree to disagree agreeably, because at the end of the day, the relationship doesn't have to sever or just have a strain, because we may not see it, eye to eye. We may not see things eye to eye. So psychological safety, Angela, is a part of that. And so we really want to begin to breed those cultures in our educational systems, social services, wherever our organization is, because our mental health has a lot to do with our wealth. We've got to create, and I talked about it a little bit in the last episode, harmony. What do you think, Angela?
Oh, I so agree. And what I started thinking about too, because just knowing so many people are watching this that don't have HR departments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a team of 5, an entrepreneur who had a great idea and hired a few people. So the environment is more casual. And so everybody kind of says what they think, and they rib each other and make jokes. And they say, oh, it's all in fun. For you, it may be fun, but not the person who's on the other side of that comment.
Yeah.
So it is. It's really about culture. And it's really about, what do you want for your organization? Because let's be real. The data tells us organizations that have psychological safety are more innovative. They're more creative. They're more productive. And they're high-performing teams. Because it's about, you talked about belonging in the last episode, and it's like the reason why DEI became the other part is the inclusion and the belonging. Because let's just be real, diversity is already there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you saying, Angela, you have not seen my place of work. It is not diverse. I beg to differ. I will say this every day, and nobody's going to convince me otherwise on this. This is one I'm going to lock down on. People who look the same are still diverse. Robin and I, on the outside, are African American women. You can also say attractive, ha ha ha. But both look, we even dressed. We didn't even know we both show up in red today. So somebody could join this podcast right now and say, well, why don't they have a more diverse partnership? The way we process, the way we think, our behaviors, our abilities, our experiences, our perspectives are diverse. It's
Love it.
one of the reasons why we connect so well, because I see so much in her that I don't have, and vice versa. That's diversity. And so the D is there. We got to create an environment that our diversity is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So when Robin and I go out together and I want to wear gym shoes and sweats because I'm kind of built that way, she don't make me feel bad, right? Unless it's a wedding. Now, she's not going to let me wear that to a wedding, right? But it's allowing me the freeness to be myself. So I say it in jest, but it's really true. It's the same thing in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Just because everybody thinks a particular way, it doesn't mean their thoughts are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also okay for the one person in the room to raise their hand and say, yeah, I don't get it, or I don't think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And for the rest of the room not to, again, shun it. So again, if you really want a great team, I used to always tell my team, because I'm highly analytical. That's a characteristic and a diverse trait, because everybody's not that I bring to every team I'm on. And I would say, when I could tell that it was bothering them, I would say, you want me in your meetings, because if you can withstand my scrutiny, there's nothing the outside world's going to bring you that you can't handle.
Mm-hmm.
And once they began to see that was true, they welcomed it. But it was, again, creating the space
Mm-hmm.
for me to speak. So if you're a leader, no matter big, small organization, create that, welcome it. So what are some tactics, right? Because, I know we want to give them some tools. One of the things you can do is assign that role to somebody and rotate it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have your team meetings, you can say, okay, today, let's see, you can put all the names in the hat or whatever, pull them out. It doesn't matter. But you can say, okay, today, Angela, your job is to disagree with everything we say logically, of course, and give us a reason why it won't work. So when you give me that as an assignment, because I want to work hard, I'm going to look for holes. Now that's become my role. But if everybody does it, and then the whole organization sees the value of it, guess what you just done? Created an opportunity to create psychological safety. Another tool, and then Robin, I'll turn it over to you, because the first two I would say is something like that, but then also a pulse check. But it needs to be anonymous. Check with people and ask them on a scale of 1 to 5. How psychologically safe do you feel?
Yeah.
No matter what the answer is, it's got to be okay, because feelings don't have to be justified.
Mm-hmm.
Use that information to figure out, how do we make the numbers continue to go up to the point that everybody's at least at 4 and 5.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want anybody on my team any lower than neutral, right? A 3. Those would be 2 things I would start with.
Yeah. And, let's face it, there are varying degrees of trauma in the workplace that we've experienced. For some of us, it may be something, in your example earlier where you said, okay, I caused the situation, and it may be something minute, but over time, it can build. And so it's important to recognize the signs. If you feel like, okay, well, normally John would really speak up in the meetings, and lately he's not been saying anything anymore. Michelle was very engaged, but lately she's not been saying anything anymore. What have we done? We possibly have contributed to their behavior where they're feeling withdrawn, where they're feeling like there's that belonging word again, they don't belong. And so the things that I would continue, build a culture of trust. And, I will say this and repeat it 10 times over. I remember years ago, Angela, as I began my journey and my education as becoming a professional coach, we had to write a dialogue on, trust and integrity and just some of the words that we wanted to have as leading as coaches. And I just never looked at it, but right at the center of the word TRUST is US. It's us.
Mm,
So it is so powerful that we create cultures of trust, because I say it like this: trust really begins with us. It begins with us, that US that's right in the middle of that. And so that's how we build psychologically sound workplaces and environments. We think about a patient, right? And us going to the hospital. We go to, the medical providers for checkups, for other reasons, right? But if someone is in a a critical care situation, think about it, they only want certain people around them. In
right.
ICU, you can't really have all kind of visitors. So where am I going with this? Our workplaces don't need to be trauma filled. They need to be safe spaces. So again, recognizing those symptoms, recognizing the exposure. If something doesn't sit well with you, go back and have the conversation. It's
Yeah.
okay to say, "Hey, Angela, I noticed that you appeared that you kind of shrunk a little bit and you weren't yourself. Is everything okay? Did we cause something that caused you to be a little withdrawn?" Because we really want to promote that environment. And it's, and when we think about patient care, it's evidenced, right? And so I draw the analogy to a patient in the hospital because, we are concerned about whose temperament. We think about bedside manner.
Mm-hmm.
What is your bedside manner as a leader with your staff when it comes to promoting psychological safety? I see you
Yeah.
graphic, Angela.
Well, and just to give them a visual really quick, if you look at the very bottom, exclusion is where you have none of it, right? But it's a continuum, because it's all
Mhm,
not going to happen overnight. And this is the 4 stages of psychological safety. I pulled this from a LinkedIn article, but I've seen it several places. And it starts with inclusion,
mhm,
then learner safety, contributor safety, and then last but not least, challenger safety,
mhm,
right? Because
mhm.
to be able to challenge things, that means you have to feel really safe. And
Yes.
so the reason why I wanted just to show this image to kind of caps off what you were saying is it comes in stages. You're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight.
Mhm.
If it's not been a conscientious effort or intentionally done, again, it's just not going to happen overnight, but you build on it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just what we want for everybody. So
Mhm.
psychological safety is definitely one of those topics we can talk about forever and ever and ever. But one of the things we have yet to do this season is dig a little bit into what we like to call our heart topic.
Yes.
And so, say, we got a good one. We got a good one this year, this time. So I'm going to give the synopsis of our heart topic. And so, Robin, before I go into the heart topic, why don't you tell everybody what the heart topic is about?
So the heart topic was born out of, many shows have hot topics, but because we are the pulse of HR and we really want to promote honesty, equity, accountability, resilience, and transparency. So we think about topics for leaders as you lead from the heart. That's really what the pulse of HR is really all about. And so that's we call them heart topics because they make our heart beat, right? We are the pulse of HR. And so these are things that we want to shed some light from the heart of HR.
Yes. And so, our topic comes to us from Washington, D.C. It's so interesting. I'm trying to pull it up again, and it's trying to make me like log into an account. I don't want to log into an account, but I guess they said you've already seen this, read this article once, and so you don't get to read it again. Like these platforms are hilarious. But there was an ethics probe because there was a DC Public Library HR director who had to resign.
Mhm.
And at the at the heart of it was there had been some accusations
Mhm.
that she had been MIA, I guess we could say, during work hours.
Mhm.
And come to find out, she had two other jobs.
Mhm.
So, unfortunately, I guess I should have screenshotted. I wouldn't know I was going to be locked out of it. But one of her jobs was actually a doula. And
Mhm.
so, and she didn't make a lot of money as a doula. A doula, delivers babies. And what she did was maybe 2 to 3 births during this time in question. But then she had a second job
Mhm.
where she definitely had some responsibilities that was quote unquote in daytime hours.
Mhm.
Now, in her defense, she did disclose all of her outside employment.
Mhm.
The article states that she did.
Mhm.
However, while she put it on the form, the article did say she did not discuss it with her supervisor. So there's so many ways I could go, and we'll put the link to the article in the show notes. But my first immediate reaction was, I told Robin, I've had the conversation with people so many times about still in time. And
Mhm.
people are like, what do you mean still in time? I think that I call it still in time when you are on the clock and you're not doing your job. You're doing other things. Now,
Mhm.
if you go read an article, you know, you go, you make a doctor's appointment. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people who are actively doing other income generating activities. I have awareness of, I've done a lot of work with various city governments of a city employee who was driving Uber and while at work, like you leaving work and picking up people and driving. This to me is the definition of still in time. On
Mhm.
the flip side, I could also talk about the fact that as the supervisor, why are we giving people forms to fill out we're not going to read and dig a little deeper? Because if you read the conflict of interest paperwork that she filled out and you saw she had other jobs, that would have been the opportunity to ask these questions. So when do you do this? How do you manage? There was some accusation that she was attending a conference and also worked 2 days telework while she was at a 5-day conference for the other job. It was just all kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Now, she said she wasn't going to get into the weeds and all the defenses, but she stands very firm that she did not do anything wrong. So
Yeah. Yeah.
she's the
So,
HR director. That's the part about it, right? She's the HR person.
so what she did say, she admitted and said, I'm not going to say that I may not have taken a quick call or two, but definitively, she said, I didn't do anything wrong. She said that she took time off to go to this conference. So she said she put in the appropriate amount of vacation time, leave time, or whatever. So she stood in her position. So it definitely becomes one of those things about balance because many people do more than one thing, but making sure that you're functioning on four cylinders to make sure the path is clear, make sure there's an understanding. Hey, I was coaching in an environment and I was still working full time, but I took my coaching appointments before work, at lunch, in the evenings. I was not sitting in my office at 2 o'clock coaching somebody because that was wrong. Not unless I decided to do a 2 o'clock lunch and coach somebody, right? But I made sure because I wanted to make sure things were above bar. And like Angela said, knowing, making sure your supervisor knows, my employer knew what my outside ventures were, and so but I still was very mindful of what I was doing and when I was doing it, even as far as, because my background is in HR, I didn't pick up any HR consulting clients. I made
Mhm.
sure that I did not work with a competitor. Could you imagine if I was working for that company and then I was doing business similarly situated with a competitor of theirs?
Oh, yeah.
So that's something else that I didn't do. So I made sure that what I was doing was not in direct competition. So there's a way to do it, but again, it should be in balance, and they're my word again, in harmony. So you
So,
make sure that you keep things ethical.
Yeah, I love the phrase, like, clear lines of demarcation.
Yes.
When I started my business, I was still working for the government, and because I had relocated and I was working from home, and it was permissible. My home was my duty station. The government bought me a desk, and for my home office, and I had monitors and all that. When I started my business, because I didn't even want to use the desk, because even though it was in my physical house, because they paid for it, I actually rented office space from Regis. And from the day I started my business, you will see I had a lease with Regis. And I went up to Regis when I had my coaching clients, because back then I coached in person, and I kept all my business files and everything in that office. Even had two phones, right? Like, even in my real life, it's a work phone, it's a personal phone, it's a work laptop, it's a personal laptop. Like, and now I know I'm anal that way, right? Because that's just how I move anyway. But I just say that to say it was to help with that. And then I got written up on a somebody made a ethical complaint against me, and I did get investigated right before I left. And what they found, because they searched all my emails, like, you didn't do nothing out of work. But what they found was, I think maybe over the course of 4 or 5 years, because also my old house, I was renting it out. So technically that was outside employment. Now, I didn't consider it that, but a couple of times the rental properties sent me a note and said, hey, is it okay to lease the house, whatever? And I reply back, yeah, or send back a signed contract. And I did. And I just basically said, duly noted. I mean, it was so inconsequential, but like I said, I got thoroughly investigated. So I also know what it's like to be investigated. Mm-hmm. And I was just so grateful that I had practiced the things that I had practiced. So yeah, it's nothing wrong with having outside employment, but it's about integrity. And many of the people who are doing this is because they want to be self-employed and do their own thing. And the only thing I'm going to say is, I think we attract what we are. Mm-hmm. And so, if you want highly integral people and people who are going to honor the time that they're supposed to be working for you and be working on your stuff for the time that you're paying them and this, that, and other, then you got to give that, right? You get what you give. And so hopefully as an HR director, I think maybe, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say it was an honest mistake. Mm-hmm. But, maybe we can reach out to her and she'll get an interview, like that might be really cool. But, you're up there, Robin. So, I don't know. Maybe find her and see if she wants to tell her side of the story, right? But like I said, but what I will say as a manager is there's enough blame to go around.
Yeah.
So yeah, the organization has to do their part too.
Yes. So wonderful, wonderful topic. That was a great article and great discussion. So wow.
I was going to say, if you all have articles or topics, again, that you want to suggest, it's pulseofhr@gmail.com. Comment in the chat. Again, we have a YouTube page. So please go to the Pulse of HR YouTube page, like us, follow us, so you'll get the video of all the podcasts. And also, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast location, whether that's, Amazon, Apple, or whatnot. But we are here for you. And again, we're back and better than ever.
Yes. So thank you once again to my awesome co-host, Angela Hooper Minifield, because you have experienced another episode of the Pulse of HR, where we continue to curate conversations from the heart of HR with honesty, equity, accountability, resiliency, and transparency. Thank you for listening. See you soon. Welcome to the Pulse of HR with your host, practitioners Angela Hooper Minifield and Robin K. Butler, curating conversations from the heart of HR with honesty, equity, accountability, resiliency,